Lives in Croatown for 32 years, married to Allison, who's a native of Virginia Beach for 30 years. She's an artist. A little plug, AllisonWanArt.com. They have 2 adult children, Brittany and Lee. Semi-retired. I'm not sure what semi-retired is, Mr. Swan. You're going to have to explain that. Semi-retired from Advanced Dealer Services as an owner since 1980. Began surfing at 15 years old and continues to do so. Just returned from a trip to El Salvador and heading to Costa Rica in February. Looking for volunteers to carry his bags. He's a life member of the New Haven Masonic Lodge and Princess Anne Masonic Lodge and Scottish Rite 32. He's a board member of the ECSC, East Coast Surfing Association Foundation, treasurer of Virginia Beach International Surf Museum, administrator of Facebook page Save Rudee Loop, which has 5,000 members. He's a chairman of the ECSC, was a chairman of the ECSC in 1977, life member of Virginia Beach JCs, and in 2009 was inducted into the ECSC Legends Hall of Fame. Without further ado, Mr. Ron Swan.
All right.
Well, I might add that John Moss and I both went to Princess Anne High School. We're kind of like bookends. He was in the top 25%, and I wasn't. But this is really about open space. And Dawson Sterling, when he was living in Cocoa Beach, Florida, created a Facebook page called Save Rudee Loop. His dad used to own the Princess Anne Hotel, which at one time was probably the trademark hotel of Virginia Beach on all the postcards. His health deteriorated, so he asked me to help him as administrator on the Facebook page. So that's why I'm here. Back in the 80s, I was with a group called Virginia Beach Forward, and it was a lot of developers, a lot of businessmen, and one night we were there for a presentation. A gentleman named Mac Rawls was talking about building an aquarium on General Booth Boulevard. And I was sitting right next to Lit Hudgens, who owned Hudgens Real Estate. He was a developer. And under his breath, he said, you know, you could build a lot of condominiums right there on Alice Creek and make a lot of money. And fortunately, that didn't happen. Virginia Beach built the Marine Science Museum, which is now the Virginia Aquarium, I think. And there's thousands and thousands of people that visit there, particularly on a rainy day. So the return on investment for Virginia Beach was pretty high. Also, open space, you can go back to Mount Trashmore, which was a trash dump, and you may remember that 2 disc jockeys on WNOR FM 99 on April Fool's Day said that there was a methane gas leak coming from Mount Trashmore, and they were evacuating people, and people took it seriously, so those 2 guys got suspended for 10 days. But Rudee Loop's important because, for a lot of reasons, actually, it's the last open space down at Virginia Beach. It has open parking. People can go to the beach, they can enjoy it, they can fish, they can surf. And so the premise of this is that open space is very valuable. You don't always have to put a hotel, and the return on investment with a hotel isn't as high a lot of times as is open space. And so Virginia Beach this is what they put out, and there's basically 4 groups that have offered to develop the area. One is Bruce Thompson. Another one is the Virginia Gentleman. Third one is it's Armada Hoffer, really, and the 4th one is Parks and Recreation, which is very interesting. Our preference for Save Rudee Loop would be pretty much leave it as it is. We'd rather not have a parking garage because it's difficult to bring surfboards down the elevator or down steps. we'd rather not have an amphitheater because that sound is going to carry all the water over to Croatan. We'd kind of like for Virginia Beach to leave it as it is, or develop it into a park. That's what we'd like to see. There's I didn't know that. So in the big, now was that the Schooner Hotel at the end? That's for sale for $17 million. 19 now. Wow. So there it is. It's really not much. And back when the steel pier was there, it wasn't much then either. The only reason it's something now is because it's the last space. That's it. So, and here, the city has hired WPA, basically an architectural firm, or they're all architects, to survey and get input from the citizens. I don't know why they're doing that, but they are. And you can still do it if you want. Let's go ahead and do that. So that you can say what you like to have as an individual. Do you want a dog park? Do you want an amphitheater? Do you want a skateboard ramp? And they'll assemble all this information and present it to the city, I guess.
Question here, Mr. Swan.
So here the, huh? Oh yes, ma'am.
I did not see on the survey that you showed an option to leave it alone. Did I miss that, or is that not on there? Okay. So it's a push it right other.
Well, outdoor recreational space would just be leaving it as, or just parking. There's
Well, the problem is there's no option for do nothing, which means you can't choose that, which means ultimately they're going to say everybody wants to do something with it. It's just a matter of what to do. So it's a push pull.
Yeah.
Well, with the city, I think it's all about the money. And there's 4 proposals. One is the city itself. So really the only thing you can do. Well, keep going past this. I'll make 2 more points. So Bruce Smith wants to just develop it and put hotels there and make money and residential restaurants, et cetera, et cetera. The Virginia gentleman, which I think really is de facto Bruce. And Bruce, just, a lot of things he's done well. Gold Key is Bruce, and Parks and Recreation, Envision Skate Park, sculpture playgrounds, food truck, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So let's go ahead and go past that.
Those are very hard to read.
So for myself and a few other people here, we'd like to see a surf museum there at the Loop. The Loop is really, to us, all about surfing. The oldest continuously running surf contest, of which George Alvarez is really in charge of, in the world, is right there with Virginia Beach JC's at the Loop. So that's important to us.
Can't read any of that.
So multifamily, parking garage, just develop. Maybe a Margaritaville. I don't know. So while that's advancing, the 2 other points I wanted to make was, before the Civil War, a couple gentlemen submitted proposals for a park in New York City, and one of the gentlemen was our publisher for Walden and Thoreau and all those guys. So they envisioned a park, and that park, of course, is Central Park in New York City, and it's one of the most valuable pieces of real estate, not because they built on it, because they didn't build on it. So they wanted open space for the working man to bring his family in the city of New York. These are comments that people have made. The surveys that we have from our membership, obviously with actually almost 6,000 members, they all want to leave the loop as it is. And you're right, that's not one of the 4 proposals, but I'm going to mention that in just a second. So you can keep going faster through it. So this is from 2020, actually. We put it in the Beacon, and we want to kind of get a survey from each individual city council member where they stood. And most of them, or just about all of them, were for open space. Rosemary was for open space. The mayor said he's for open. So everybody says they're for open space, but does it really mean they're for open space? What happens when they vote? This is one proposal. George has put together one with the Surf Museum. So this is, Linwood didn't win, but this is a letter to the editor where he's a proponent of open space at the Loop, and he's a hotel owner, so that's interesting. So everybody, a lot of people know about this issue in Virginia Beach. So where do we go? Years ago, John Atkinson was against light rail. So whether you're for or against, it's academic. He mobilized everybody and forced the city out of the light rail business, and that's the direction they were going. I don't know if you were for or against it, but
Again.
okay. And I submit to you that's probably what we're going to have to do. We're going to have to force or raise the level of awareness to the point that city council has to leave it alone. They can't. We want the city to buy it. We want it to be a park. We want it to be open space. And so it starts right here.
We already own it, it's a park.
Well, we don't own the hotel.
We don't need to buy the hotel.
We don't need to buy it.
We could buy the hotel, and the city certainly spends a lot of money on a lot of stuff, right? So
Doesn't make it right.
I don't think they can say they don't have the money. So it's just a piece of dirt or sand, really. That's all it is. And you don't have to put a hotel everywhere along. We really don't have that much beachfront left down there that's open to the public, unless you want to go to a parking garage down by the Hilton or 8th Street or whatever it is. So we're just a bunch of surfers, a bunch of guys that I'm never gonna. I don't surf for First Street anymore. I'm too old. But I'd like for all the kids in the future to be able to surf there. I'd like for the fishermen to be able to fish there. So that's my message. So write your city councilman, send them emails. We'll probably get working on a petition that will circulate and get everybody to sign that feels the same way we feel. So I think that's about all I want to say about that. Yes, ma'am.
So when you talk about,
Can we get on the microphone, please? We're recording.
so when you talk about it potentially being a park, what would that look like?
Well,
No parking.
our vision would be a park and a place to park. It would be both things. So it would not a parking garage. That's the last thing we want. Pretty much, if you're familiar with the Loop right now, there's plenty of parking. Well, if they buy the hotel, there's room for a surf museum. There's room for a park. It's just a park you walk in. Benches, shrubbery, things like that.
So what I'm thinking is currently, anybody can go down there anytime and walk along the beach or do whatever. Are we looking at potentially if there's a park, things are locked down and shut off at a certain hour? Like you see, if you went out to Bayville Park, for instance, you can't park out there after a certain hour. Things are shut down. So would this still be open to the public all the time?
Probably.
I've never surfed a day in my life, and I want it to stay open.
Well, right now, the parking lot closes at night. The city owns it, and I think that will continue.
You know what this looks like?
Yes, ma'am.
Looks like you got 6 roosters and 1 hen laying.
Ronnie, since I'm standing here, can I go next?
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry.
Thanks.
For those of us who don't surf, can you explain the geographical constraints on surfing that exist along any part of our beach in Virginia Beach? I guess the question I'm coming to is, if there's a hotel there, anyway, why is this park so important to surfers? That's what I don't understand.
Well,
Thank you.
There's a jetty there, and where there's a jetty, the sand builds up and it makes better waves. That's been a surf spot ever since I can remember. Since I started surfing in 1967, you surfed at the Steel Pier when it was there, which was north of the jetty, maybe 100 feet, 150, 200 feet, I don't know. And sand accumulates around the pier too. So the surf is better there. You have access there because there's parking, right? The jetty blocks a lot of the wind coming from the south. If the wind is coming from the north, you got to surf on the Croatan side. There's only 3 surfing areas, 4 if you count Sandbridge. There's the jetty, there's the north part of Croatan, there's Pendleton, and there's Sandbridge, right? That have surfing all the time. You can't surf the rest of the beach between the hours of, I think, 10 and 4. You're restricted. But that's a good surf spot. And if there's a hotel there, they're going to need parking. They're going to have a parking garage. How are the fishermen going to get there, and how are the surfers going to get there? You can't carry a surfboard down a bunch of stairs or in an elevator.
So this would be a dual-use situation between fishermen and surfers with time constraints on it?
No. Fishermen fish the inlet. They don't fish the beach. Two different spots.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am.
We are lucky that the city manager put the retreat agenda in the Friday packet.
Right.
And in that Friday packet, under city council priorities, on the very bottom of the first day page, there were about a dozen things listed, like collective bargaining, which, we all know what we think about that, disparity study, economic development, flooding, housing affordability. But if you get to the second column, right smack in the middle of it is Rudee Loop. So they are going to be talking on Tuesday about Rudee Loop. And if you have any feelings about Rudee Loop, you should be communicating them to City Council at vbgov.com before Tuesday. You just need to tell them you want to keep it undeveloped or whatever you want. This is where they set their, in the past, and John Moss could speak more to it, they set their tentative idea of what the mayor and vice mayor and everyone else will do. And it seems like affordability and tax relief is not anywhere in the picture. So we can't even expect them to talk about that. So let's talk about Rudee Loop with them and get them to take a look at that. But, everybody needs to spend 5 or 10 minutes sending an email, because coming to these meetings doesn't translate to getting their attention. That's my suggestion.
Well, that's right. You just got to communicate with City Council. The only thing that trumps development money are votes, right? And if someone is afraid that they're not going to get the votes because they took a stand on a position that the general public is unhappy with, and they think twice. So I think that's right. Communicate with City Council, send your emails, send your letters, and try to save Rudee Loop.
So if we build a park there, what's going to stop them in the future from developing? I'm using 31st Street Park as an example. That park's been there for decades, forever, and we tried to stop it, and there's a hotel there now.
And the hotel owns the park.
And the hotel owns the park. And just spitballing here, if you build a parking garage and get surfers to work with the designer to build it so you can get surfboards up and down, then you have something there that's built that's going to take a lot more work to try to tear that down. If you build a park, again, 31st Street Park as the example, it went away. What's going to stop them from taking that?
Well, I would think that,
I mean, I'm not against it,
well,
but
no, I understand. I understand.
you spend all this money and build the park, and then some hotel comes and buys it later.
Well, we were afraid there was going to be a casino there at one time, so.
Well, we don't know what the future city councils are going to do.
Sure, that's
Well,
true.
to help you out there.
Yeah, thanks.
Everybody doesn't remember the history.
We gotta have it on microphone. Way it is.
Everyone doesn't remember the history of the 31st Street property. It actually was a property owned by the Development Authority. They couldn't pay the debt. They were in the process of really, if we didn't step in, which I didn't vote to do it, they would have been foreclosed on and repossessed by the lender. So that was never publicly held property, meaning by the public, nor used by the public. It was Development Authority owned that property, which means they only need how many votes to do something with that property? 6. So it wasn't the same status. Rudee Loop, with the exception of the 0.5 acres owned by the Development Authority, has been in public use, is owned by the taxpayers. So I don't think the city, think us, we own it. So therefore, under our city charter, it takes 9 votes to do something with it other than a public general use property. So you couldn't build a hotel on that property without 9 votes, which is why it hasn't been developed so far, because the mayor who's been pushing for development for something multi-use, I'll say that, didn't have 9 votes. And I think that was the heart of Linwood's article. And my position and Rosemary's before that, Jessica. Now the hotel, the Schooner Hotel, should the city buy that property has never been in public use. In fact, the parking lot for that hotel is actually owned by the taxpayers and leased back to the hotel. So without the city's property, they'd have to build something totally different to meet their parking requirement. And most people probably don't recall that if you have a hotel east of Atlantic Avenue, you're not required to provide parking for your employees and staff, just for the hotel room. So that is a distinction between 31st Street and Rudee Loop.
So what's going to prevent the city from giving the land to the Development Authority to circumvent that?
Still takes 9 votes to transfer the title of the property, no matter who you transfer it to. That's in the city charter. I can't speak to 24th Street. My memory is only so good.
I don't know either.
Ron, if you look where the plan for the amphitheater is, those amphitheaters there, that's right adjacent to the jetties. Back in the early 60s, there was probably one of the most popular restaurants and entertainment centers called the Surf Rider. And I think it was the Ash Wednesday storm that came through and pushed it out into the ocean. I think Weller's, I can't remember the guy's name that owned it now. It was very, very popular. So when you go to Central Park in New York, you don't have all this stuff there. You've got a park. You can lay down, you have benches and all that. The parking garage is one issue, where it's located, whatever. The surfing museum, that looks pretty big compared to everything else when you look at the hotel to the right of it and all of that.
Well, that's because George did it and he's on the board.
Oh, that's so. A skate park. We've got skate parks all over the city. I'm not sure that's the way to go on that. But if you look up, if you take out all those amphitheaters, and I'm not sure why you're going to have 2 amphitheaters. I mean, we already have amphitheaters down here off of Dam Neck. So, and the other one is the 31st Street. That was supposed to be a park. There's not a single bench on 31st Street. You've got 2 stages, and those both are serving Bruce Hump. Well, it was Bruce Hump 31st Street Hotel. Sure. So I'm not sure where the driving force is to have amphitheaters there, 2 of them, For what purpose?
I think that's just one rendering of what could go there. That's not our ideal. Where's the parking? We don't see an amphitheater. We see a park with parking, and of course we're biased towards a little surf museum there because, you know, Virginia Beach is the center of the East Coast, and ECS, that's fine.
Well, Ron, also in the advertisement I sent out for this meeting, I suggested we do a referendum on it and let the people decide.
I think that's great.
And that's the way to go. Now, the wording on the referendum, that's up to the city council to do. So, thank you.
I think you're exactly right, Robert. Is that it? All right, thank you all very much. Good morning.
Thanks, Ryan. John, are you doing General Assembly updates? Is that you?
Hope not.
Okay.
Want to? I can give you some.
Okay, you're on the agenda anyway, so why don't you come on up?
Okay.
You are.
I can't remember the numbers because you didn't give me time.
So
I
Diana
mean, if you want to
Howard
give me time, I'll look some up.
from the TV. Why don't you do your part and then I'll see yours.
Oh, yes.
Tell them about your score that one game the other day.
I got 184 on my second game. I've never been above 164 is my all-time high. And my average is only 125. Anyway, come to legislation. I'm trying to do this off the top of my head. Bills to give the city localities the ability to take away the 1 cent on the grocery tax, right? 1.5 cents on the grocery tax, to give them the option to do that. Failed in the Senate. Also, any tax relief, you know, proposed also failed in the Senate. The brick wall knocked all them down. Anybody who's pro-life, all those bills got knocked down in the Senate. They're not going anywhere. Election integrity, they all got knocked down as well. So, you know, we'll keep the drop boxes, we'll keep the 45 days, won't have IDs or any of that stuff. All that was knocked down, killed in the Senate. A lot of this stuff passed in the House, but when they go to the Senate, they'll probably die when they get over there. Education in the House, Tim Anderson's bill moved on, right, for the pornography, right? I believe that one moved on. I have to look at my notes. But Bill DeSteff's in the Senate, that got killed. There's a bill, HB 1531, for all those who don't like to pay taxes. They want to raise the sales tax another 3.3 cents. You know, we already have a 1 cent sales tax where 0.7 of it goes to transportation, goes to HR tax. So they want to add another 0.3 to that for highway construction. You know that HR TAC now controls the transit funding that's regional, right? Which they don't have the ability to use for light rail, or at least not extended past Norfolk. But that's a change in the bill that could happen. I keep looking for it. But anyway, yes.
What about Senator DeSteff putting some gun bills in? What's up with that?
I don't know. I haven't asked him. I got the same email that you got on that. I leave that up to the BCDL and the NRA to look at gun bills. So you can go on their website and they send out emails on that all the time. Yeah, and there's 1508, HB 1508, which is Glenn Davis's bill for school choice. That got sent to Appropriations Committee, right? So you can, you know, contact that committee, which the chair of that is Delegate Knight, right? To ask him to let that one go forward. That is probably the least offensive to the Senate side, because they've knocked down anything that's school choice, because everything that's school choice to them is taking money away from education, public education, right? It's like it's their money and not our money, that we can't have our own money back to send our kids to the choice of our, school of our choice, right? There was a whole bunch of low-income people that went before and spoke. Some of us spoke online, right, in favor of the bill, and they forwarded that to the Appropriations Committee to see how much it was going to cost. And anyway, so the reason they don't like it is they think that they're going to have to subsidize more for education instead of making them live within their means, and not having so many high-end assistant principals and administrations that are making six-figure salaries while the teachers are making less. Let's see. Ranked choice voting, there are now 3 ranked choice voting bills, right? We had Lynn Taylor from the Virginia Institute for Public Policy speak at our last meeting on that and showed why ranked choice voting would not be good, right? Also, you can go on the Heritage page, and if you get our newsletter, both of those links are in it, right? So you can see why we would not want ranked choice voting, right? So now there's 3 bills for that.
Give just a very brief explanation of ranked choice, like
Well,
Alaska's a perfect example.
Huh? Yeah, Alaska was a perfect example, and California, mostly Maine. There's a whole bunch of examples, and like I said, you can read them in there. I can't give them verbatim, right? But the Republicans seem to think that because Governor Youngkin, in a like a local primary, right? It wasn't at the polls or anything, won that by ranked choice voting, that we should now have that locally for our school boards and our city councils, and there's another 2 bills to do it federally, right? One to do it statewide, one to do it federally, right? And if you do ranked choice voting, if they put, like 12 people on there, you rank them down, which ones you want. And you may not want any of them. So if yours couple on the top, you say you only vote for 2 because those are the only 2 that you like, right? And you don't vote for the rest. If other people vote for them and then, yours isn't in the top, your vote goes away. Yours isn't counted anymore. And they just keep going down. And so somebody who doesn't get a whole lot of votes, may wind up winning somehow because they keep knocking people out of it. And if you trust the voting machine now that does 1 + 1 + 1 + 1, are you going to trust them when they do a complicated thing going from ballot to ballot to ballot to ballot and eliminating them as, so, just saying. So those are the only ones I remember off the top of my head. If I look at my list, maybe I can find some more.
Diana, on those those gun bills, I talked to Bill yesterday, and then I talked to Phil Van Cleve last night, who raised the issue on that. That's going to all be changed this week, according to Phil. He's worked it out with Bill. What it was, if you went into a hospital, privately, whatever, they could ban all guns.
Well, yeah, if you go to Centera now, there's a
Yeah,
sign on there
right.
that says no guns. I've never paid attention to it.
And when when SunTrust became Truist, they have the same message on there. So I wrote to the corporate office. They sent me a letter back. I'll probably need to put it up, but I said, so if I walk into your bank and I'm not allowed to have a weapon, it's a gun-free zone, what's going to stop somebody who wants to rob me or the bank? How am I going to protect myself?
Exactly.
So it's a bad bill, and Bill's working it out. There were lobbyists involved in all of this, so hopefully that's going to change.
Yeah, well, if you can conceal carry and they don't have metal detectors, then they're not going to know.
Yeah, that's right.
Yes.
What about the short-term rental bill?
Oh yeah, there's a short-term rental bill coming up. I sent it to Elaine to read, but I don't remember what it said. I asked her to read it. I can't read everything.
It was submitted by a person, representative from Norfolk, that's the one I'm remembering, and it would exempt short-term rentals that were professionally managed by real estate corporations from inspections by third party, meaning the city, for compliance with regulations. And I think people are saying, hey, that special interest legislation, so the single operator has to bear all that stuff.
Oh, there's a whole bunch of special interest stuff
I don't
there.
know where that's gonna go. I don't know if it's clear to committee or not, but I do know that that's what that bill is. It was submitted by a legislator from, a state senator from
Luray or Lexington, it's like the western part of the state.
Yeah.
And somebody on the eastern shore.
Can't hear.
There's nobody around here had anything would touch
Yeah.
it.
I mean, there are bills to,
No, deal's not on it.
And the reason why is, generally speaking, the General Assembly doesn't pass legislation or consider it because active litigation involving that. And if anyone's familiar, we are being sued. I think there's like 5 suits against the city. We've won some already. Some haven't yet been held, but it is under active litigation. And generally speaking, the General Assembly doesn't pass a bill when there's ongoing legislation about the legitimacy of government even having regulation.
okay, and your energy bills are going to be going up too, especially, yeah. Well, because they're going to be doing the wind farms, right? Because they made sure that the SEC couldn't down it, right? And so we get to pay for it, and it'll be on your energy bill there that you pay for funding for low-income people so that their energy bills don't go up. And there's bills in there now so that certain companies, large companies, won't have to pay it. I mean, so us in the middle, we're going to be squeezed into paying it, you know? So they want these big businesses and data companies and all that other stuff not to have to, because they use a lot of energy, to have to pay this increase in energy and be exempt from it, but the rest of us will have to pay it. And then there's a bill for 16-year-olds to vote. I'm sure you're all excited about that. I mean, we already have students that come here from out of state being allowed to vote. Now, we want 16-year-olds to vote. Oh, and 16-year-olds to make their own medical decisions without parents knowing. That's another bill, right? The euthanasia bill, that one got killed. At least that one got killed. The other two are still alive. Yes?
Repealing the only EV sales by 2035, that repeal also got.
Right, yeah, right, yeah. The Senate killed us not being tied to California, right, for electric cars. We have to only be able to sell electric cars. I think it's like 2045 or something like that. 35? Yeah, you won't be able to, unless it's a used gas car, you won't be able to sell a gas car here. You won't be able to buy electric cars. And there's a bill that's a constitutional amendment for getting rid of the car tax. I doubt if that'll fly. Because remember, Governor Gilmore had that, and he got that passed, and it was supposed to be done in phases. Phase 1 went into effect, and when Warner took governor, he killed it because localities were complaining about it, even though the state was making up what they were losing in the car tax. So, any questions? So yeah, you can go on Liz. If anybody wants to learn how to do Liz, I've got my computer with me. I'll show you how to do it, and you can speak on Zoom on any of these bills and follow it or whatever. So,
good job.
All right.
Ronna got a hand up back there.
Well,
Ronna, go ahead.
Bill Distat, who is up there in Richmond working for us, has asked me to kindly circulate his petitions to get signatures for anyone who lives in his new redistricted District 20. And so please feel free to sign these. The best way I can describe it is his new district is mostly north of Virginia Beach Boulevard, but there's a little bit south. If anyone who is in District 8 for City Council, District 6 for City Council, and much of District 9 for City Council. So
all of the Eastern Shore.
okay. And all the Eastern Shore. So just trying to get signatures for him to get on the ballot. You're not committing to give him money. He may send you a thank you note for signing this. So please, if you could take a minute and just sign this, it would help him greatly. Thank you.
But do you have to live in that area?
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you have to live in this district. If you don't know where it is, Bill, I have a really tiny map. It's hard to find a good district 20 map online.
Do you have more on this agenda you want to talk to?
Croatan is in the district though.
Announcement for tax relief. Tax relief. It doesn't look like we're gonna get it on the agenda.
Okay. All right. Real quick, a couple things. Gentleman walked in after I made the announcement. Just want to introduce Kennick L. Sitting in the back there with a hat on and a red shirt. Kennick is going to be one of the representatives on the forum February 4th for our crisis in the community, and he's one of the folks we've been speaking with. Kennick, do you want to add anything? I know you weren't here for my announcement. Basically, I just described the forum and what we're trying to address. Okay, he trusts me. That's good. So you'll give me that check later. Okay, great. Are there any announcements from the floor from anyone? John.
This is, I just want to remind people, because Rhonda talked about the retreat, and she mentioned that tax relief wasn't on their look. I just want to remind the people that when we received the certified ending balance from last year's budget, it was well over $100 million of surplus revenue from last year's budget after you subtract out the reservations for things they committed to before we could get the certified balance. But there's at least $85 million of surplus on the combined city and school from last year due to under execution, meaning they appropriated money they didn't spend, plus overperforming revenues, meaning more revenue came in than they appropriated, and there's $85 million of your money. Now, you may recall that we had surplus revenue at the state, and we had overperforming revenues at the state. Our Republican governor, and then tighter, narrow margin Senate, and Republican General Assembly, we got the deduction for singles went up, I think to 8,000 or 9,000, and the ones for joint went to 16, plus many of you got a check $250 for single, $500 for a family. I think at some income level that cut off. I can't remember where that cutoff was. Well, I know that I didn't get one. Then but my point is, and we removed the state sales tax on food. Because why? And still the governor did what? Put more money into education, put more money into roads, because he shared the dividend, so to speak, right, with the public who earned it, and also to deliver some services. We didn't get that consideration from city council. So when you're writing, you might want to remind them that they're holding $85 million of your money, and we've been suffering from inflation in food, and you name it, that should be added to their agenda, and you expect them to send you a dividend check because you've earned it.
Amen. Absolutely.
I'm going to tag on to that just to tell you how rich I was when I was a kid. We used to throw eggs at people's houses and toilet paper them. So you can't do that anymore because you can't afford it. Only the rich kids do that. No, I wouldn't really throw eggs in anybody's house. I'm sorry, I didn't mean that. And the other thing I'll say is the only former council member sitting here, John Moss, at least of recent, was the only one that voted against the real estate tax increase in Virginia Beach. So, if I could ask, you don't have to raise your hand if you don't want to, but how many people in here are registered Republicans? How many people are Republicans? Okay.
Dues paying Republicans or?
No, you don't have to be a dues payer to the local Republican Party, because I don't pay that. Thank you. So I just want to say that we ran a candidate, Republican Party, Virginia Beach ran a candidate against John, who's also a Republican. We ran against Amy Solares, who's a Republican at school board, and they supported a Democrat. So those races were split. Neither one of, the candidate, T.J. Morgan, that ran against John, split the vote. John had more votes, obviously, but we ended up with a Democrat on city council. The reason I say that, and I'm pretty bitter about it, is because John was the only person that voted against the real estate tax increase. Elaine Fekete, they ran Nanette Miller, Republican, against Elaine, and Elaine had more votes, but of course the Democrat won because the Republicans, in their infinite wisdom, split the vote. So we now have an all-Democrat council. I don't care what you think about Rosemary Wilson or Dyer, but they all voted for tax increases. So once you're not a fiscal conservative, in my book, I don't know what their definition of Republican is, but I look at us as fiscal conservatives in this group and most of the people we speak to, because they're spending our money. So John Moss, we lost, the only sane voice I thought on city council. Rhonda Marsh ran and didn't get elected, another fiscal conservative, very knowledgeable. Elaine Fekete ran and didn't get elected. So we need to do a better job overall. If you want tax relief, to raise the real estate tax, and I hate to harp on this, but to raise real estate tax on Virginia Beach citizens at this point, inflation at an all-time high, $85 million in surplus, it just doesn't make any sense. I can't imagine running a platform or campaigning in Virginia Beach on city council and being able to stand up and say you're willing to raise taxes. I confronted Barbara Henley in our district several times. She would not admit that she voted to raise taxes, which she obviously did. And, they dance around the issues, but we need to be better collectively at making people aware of who's on council and where their votes are. So please remember that. Anything else from the floor? Sir.
Bill Curtis, the chairman of the Republican Party of Virginia Beach, has put me on this red, blue, I don't know what color ribbon committee to do strategic planning, not to do the process for endorsing candidates in nonpartisan races. But the strategic planning, and at the last city committee meeting, there was some concern about who was on that, and I'm here to tell you that if you want to have input into that, I'm happy to take your input and put it in.
Can you come forward, and then we'll get you up. We want to record you for posterity.
Andy, give us a lot of detail on
And Andy has run, go ahead, you give him your bio, Andy, okay? Just give him a little bit.
I embarrassed myself. My name is Andy Bunn, and I've been appointed by the chairman of the Republican Party of Virginia Beach to be on this, I don't know if it's blue or red ribbon panel, but to help the Republican Party of Virginia Beach do some strategic planning. And there was some concern about input from everybody, and so I'm here to say that I'll take your input. It's not the committee that is dealing with endorsing candidates in nonpartisan races, but it's okay, what do we do this month, and what do we do next month, and how do we analyze an election, and what should we be doing as a result, and how do we collect lessons learned and put those into practice, that kind of thing. So I'm happy to be your voice in that committee, and the only thing we've done so far is ask people what they thought the mission of the Republican Party of Virginia Beach is, and that's as far as we've got. Yes, ma'am. Laura.
So, I appreciate everything that you do, Andy, and I absolutely trust that you will be an excellent person on this committee. I do not have the same confidence in everybody that was assigned to this committee, but one of the things I have to say to piggyback on what Roger pointed about the tax raise, the Republican Party of Virginia used in a campaign ad that Aaron Rouse voted for this tax raise in ads to support Kevin Adams. If we as a party are to not lose credibility, we have 5 members of city committee who voted for that same tax raise. We have Bobby Dyer, Rosemary Wilson, Linwood Branch, who's not on there anymore, so that's neither here nor there at this point, Michael Berlucci, and Rocky Holcomb.
Amen.
If we are to be honest, not lose credibility, and not to show any sense of integrity, it's either good all the time or it's bad all the time. And we as a party need to start taking a stance on issues. We never take a stance on issues. If tax raises are bad, they're bad no matter who voted for them. So is this going to be a part of, you know, we have to have our own party members voting in accordance with the Republican creed before we start beating up the other people for doing exactly what our people are doing.
Well, I can't guarantee that will be what comes out, but I'm happy to put that in. Absolutely, that we should be consistent in our beliefs and stuff. I think that's a reasonable request for us to do planning. It seems like we should be talking about that stuff. So thank you, Laura. Thank you, Tony.
I would like to know.
Again, we've only met twice, and the only thing we've done is solicit input to the.
Yeah, but you know the answer to this.
Okay.
I would like to know.
I'm grateful for the confidence that you have in me, Tony.
I would like to know, is Bobby Dyer, Rosemary Berlucci, Rocky Holcomb, and whom was the fifth, are they still part of city committee? And if so, why? Number one, because it would seem to me that at the very first city committee meeting, which I was at after election, they should have immediately dissolved them of being a member of city committee and the Republican Party. Nothing said, just you're out. Do you know if they're still part of the city committee?
I don't have the roster or anything, but I think what you are suggesting ultimately is part of our strategic planning is that we analyze what our positions are on votes, and then analyze people who have taken on responsibility and whether they voted that way or not. And that's we should be taking that into account. I think.
And this isn't just pertaining to the voting for the tax
Yeah, right.
increase. This is endorsing and supporting a Democrat. Now, in the past, because I've been part of that party since 1985, in the past, they would have immediately been out of the city committee and out of the Republican Party. So that's something I think that needs to be addressed.
I promise to bring that to the committee. I can't tell you that the committee and then the city committee will adopt it, but I'm happy to bring it to this strategic planning committee and be the voice of that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Tom. Turbo. Rona, and then I'll get to you, Jim. Oh, well, I can see Jim. Yes, sir.
I've attended Republican and Democrat and a couple of Libertarian meetings all over the state, supported statewide candidates. The one thing that I find interesting.
Turbo, you want to come on up here?
Okay.
Sorry, you cut ahead again.
I've attended a lot of statewide events.
You?
Attended a couple here and there, all
Yes,
over.
you have.
And the one thing I noticed is in Virginia Beach, the chairman always makes a point of shutting down anybody who might live stream or record. In Chesapeake, you can live stream it to your page from your phone. In other successful units across the state, let your friends know we're having a meeting. It's a public meeting. And our local Republican Party has stifled any attempt by members to utilize modern technology that's, anybody got one? We have body parts, we have arms, legs, and we have hands. These things have been designed to work in our hands, to use our eyes and our senses. And why has our party consistently shut that down? We had Steve Batten, who quit the party for one reason. He's a guy in the radio business, and he was told, shut your mouth, shut off your devices unless you have permission. And when he tried to live stream, he was approached by somebody walking up behind him going, tap on the shoulder. Are we addressing how we reach the population who's out there but doesn't really know we exist? They don't really care because, we're not allowed to communicate. I'm just talking from public meetings, not executive. That's my...
Well, I'm happy to bring that too. Again, I can't promise you the result, but I can promise that I'll bring that up. That rule started, what was with Ken or even with David a long time ago. So, but yeah, we should be using technology.
David Bartholomew and Kenny Nolan were like,
let me just interrupt. Let's just remember, Andy's the messenger right now. So
yeah.
I mean,
These are
not
great.
attack
This
him
is
as
great.
Republican Party. It's great that he's here. I'm glad he's listening, but I don't want to drive away where they won't show up. So remember when you're addressing them, just remember, give them the information, let them take it down, let them bring it back.
I'm not attacking them.
Okay. Just remember, so go attack them.
Weapons free.
From what y'all are talking about, and what is very depressing is we no longer have Linwood Branch and, of course, the brain of the state of Virginia, Moss, on council. And with what's going on with the two chairmen of the Republican Party. But I just wanted to mention, based on what y'all are talking about, I did mention to the beloved, of course, Laura, last year, that when I get ready to run again, she will be my direct contact person, and I will be on city council. However, I know I got a bunch of old ladies that want me to be the mayor because they don't like Bobby Dyer. But I do want to mention the 4th of July of this year would be 32 years that I've been a Republican. Yes, I am a very smart cookie and a veteran. And I did mention some time ago that if I had known about the Libertarian Party, I probably would have been a Libertarian before being a Republican. But I'm pretty sure that I'll be voting Republican. But we have to stand firm, like on the meshes, because the Virginia Beach Republican Party, and I don't know what's going on, but every time that I have come here to see the precious beloved Laura, y'all got a strong foundation that's actually factual that nobody is talking about. And we need to listen to the people that's out there. And we need to have strong, real Republicans that is Republicans, not some puppet show, because this is not Sesame Street from back in the 70s and the 80s. This is the real deal. And if you read the Bible, especially in the book of Revelations, God is talking to people and people are not listening. And from what is being said here, it's really making me register. America is if somebody votes Democrat this November and next year, we might as well just forget about America, because America is done, and we got to stand firm, like on the meshes. But I will close out. When I do run for office again, the direct contact person is going to be the beloved Laura. End of story, and did not stutter. And thank you very much.
You need to be on this side, at this microphone.
Before you actually stop, sir, could you? Yeah, that's fine. Andy, could you just tell me once again, because I'm slow on the uptake.
Yeah, right, Doctor.
You're on an advisory board for the city to do what?
RPVB, so the Republican Party of Virginia Beach.
Yeah.
And the chairman has created 2 ad hoc committees.
Okay.
One to create a proposal to present to the city committee about endorsing candidates in nonpartisan races like school board and city council. I'm not on that one.
Oh, you're not on that.
I'm not on that.
Okay. So,
I provided input to that, but because I wanted to. But the one that I'm on is strategic planning, and I think it would include how we vet candidates, how we communicate with the public, it's strategic planning, lessons learned, all kinds of things. So
would that have anything to do with the process of having a primary election citywide or anything like that? That would be the other people.
That would be the other people.
Okay.
And in fact, that's part of what I proposed is we should have it. But
yeah, yeah. And so the strategic planning is just to get a.
Okay, what should we be doing in January? What should we be doing in February? If there's an election in November, what should the Republican Party of Virginia Beach be doing between now and that election? How do we analyze the lessons learned after that election? That kind of thing.
Thank you. Thank you.
I just want to make it clear. With regards to local elections, meaning city council or school board, because they are legally non-partisan elections, they do not come under the purview of the either party, and therefore there cannot be primaries because the state board of elections won't allow those elections to happen. The localities don't have to pay them, and no parties have total jurisdiction over partisan races to establish primaries, caucuses, but you cannot have a primary for a non-partisan race. It's not legally possible.
But the Republican Party
They can do caucuses, they can do anything they want, but they can't have an election where people go to a precinct supervised by the state board of elections.
That's absolutely.
Thank you, John.
There is a bill for that.
It won't pass.
Yeah.
Okay. Lori, Joe, something else you want to
I
ask?
had one more for you.
Okay, go ahead.
So one of the first things that your committee's doing is coming up with a mission statement to kind of use as a framework, correct?
Yeah.
So one of the other big issues we have is we hear the chairman stand before the whole body of the committee every month and say, no matter what you think, we're all Republicans. Okay, that's not true. Some things you think make you a Democrat. And I might still have lunch with you if you're a Democrat, but I'm not voting for you. I'm not promoting you out there. And so it's real problematic for leadership in the Republican Party to say, no matter what you think, we're all Republicans, because it's just not true. And so I'm hoping that the mission statement will reflect that. I mean, we have, part of what makes you a Republican is that you have a certain set of beliefs. Part of what makes you a Democrat or a Libertarian, or I'm sure there are a gazillion other parties that have popped up, are because you operate within a certain belief framework. So I'm just hoping that our mission statement will reflect that.
Yeah, that's an interesting. I think when Bill talks like that, or just about any chairman of any organization, what they're saying is, okay, we are here at, in this case, the Republican City Committee, and therefore, by definition, the people who are here at that Republican City Committee meeting of the membership of the Republican City Committee are, by definition, then Republicans. But I understand your point, and yeah, we'll bring that up. Yep.
many years ago, a member at RPBB had suggested recording every elected official, one at a time, reciting the creed. At the beginning of a meeting, pick another one, and record it and post it on the RP. Jimmy Frost wanted to do this years ago, and was told a firm no every time by leadership. Is there a reason not to have Republicans reciting the Republican creed in front of the membership at the beginning of meetings?
Okay, sorry, Roger. Yep, that's right. No, I'm going to take that question just because I think that I'm going to do it like the game show. Please word your statement in the form of a question. Andy, I think it's a question. Can you go back to the leadership and basically bring those concerns to them? Just like Laura's question. John's point, summarizing this whole thing, I think the frustration is there's some legal requirements on what we can and can't do. Not just we, but we as Republicans or conservatives or libertarians, and those rules need to be followed. However, we all know below the surface, and just below the surface, is we had people that attend RPVB that they completely understood that we were running two people in places that was going to split the vote. We should know that. We should be smart enough to say, let's sit down. I don't care if you want to call it a primary. Obviously, if we can't do that, we should have a caucus. We should have a meeting. But what we shouldn't be doing is shooting ourselves in the foot. So, Andy, take it back to them. I don't think anybody cares what you call it, but we need to sit down and decide where we stand. Turbo said, are we fiscally conservative or not? What does that mean to us? And what are we going to reflect if we run for office? And if we have two people that are basically the same, we need to decide how is that going to affect us if we run against each other and have a Democrat. Josh, what did he say to you, John? He knew it was the right time to run against you because there were two Republicans on the ticket, right?
He didn't say that to me.
It was in the newspaper.
In the newspaper.
Okay.
He sent it to a reporter.
It was on the sample ballot. At the precincts, they had big signs that had both the people of each race.
Yeah.
They split the vote of every local race on the
Exactly.
Republican sample ballot.
So it's a problem,
They
right?
split the vote.
So I think we all agree.
In John's case, it was deliberate, where party leadership wanted to get rid of John.
Right.
And party leadership wanted to bring in or maintain.
So we have a problem that needs to be addressed. Also, district. Wait.
That our previous vice president in charge of precinct organization passed out lit for the Democrat candidate at Republican breakfast, and nobody batted an eye, and stood there at the polls and passed it out.
Yeah, that's a tragedy.
You can't go to a rapist or a fox in the hen house and expect him to defend.
Agreed.
So, you don't go to a prison to hire somebody to protect the kid.
I get it. Andy, I think you're hearing enough of the outrage here that you understand what the problems are. We didn't even have a candidate in District 4, not a conservative candidate. There was a one unopposed Democrat candidate in District 4. I would think that the RPVB would go out and ferret out people that live in District 4 to run a candidate. And we didn't do that. So there's a lot of things that you can take back. I appreciate you coming. I hope you come back. And I hope that you take this stuff, and we'll try to be more cordial once we get out some of the venom from the past election and move on. Another point of interest that came up about, whether you'd be a libertarian, if you had known ahead of time. I want to clarify, and Robert's probably going to jump in there and correct me. The Tidewater Libertarian Party right now is not and hasn't been for a while affiliated with the National or State Libertarian Party. There's a long history about that, and there's a reason. This particular group, Tidewater Libertarian Party, are fiscal conservatives, and most of our ethos falls back on conservative principles. That is not always the case with the Libertarian Party, of which I wouldn't be participating in. I certainly wouldn't be the communication director for this group if that were the case. We're going to vote. I say we collectively, we're all independents, but we're going to vote for fiscal conservatives. We're going to promote that ideology. We're not going to promote transgender bathrooms in the schools. We're not going to, a lot of things the Libertarian Party doesn't want to address. We're going to talk about abortion. We're going to talk about other things. If that offends some of you, you have your right to come up here and stand here. But as a conservative, so we do have some fundamental issues that we we're going to abide by. So we're not really part of the Libertarian Party. Just so you know, that has come up again this year, and we've discussed it. Robert, did you want to talk about that at all? He's happy. All right. Are there any other announcements unrelated, sir?
Yeah, 9/12 is going to be meeting Monday night for the first time this year at Why Not Pizza. We're going to be talking about the Supreme Court case, Brown versus Board of Education.
Okay. 9/12 meeting this Monday at what time? 6:30 at Why Not Pizza in Great Neck. Talking about Brown versus the Board of Education, right? Anything else? Any other announcements? Yes.
February 9th, the Tea Party meeting at the Masonic Lodge, 2849 Fritz Stand Road. We'll have Ina Klein from the Virginia Medical Freedom Alliance.
Okay, I don't know if I can get all that. February 9th, Tea Party meeting, Masonic Lodge, 7 p.m. Anybody else? Elaine, did you want to chime in there? Another former candidate for city council? Okay.
She can give the treasurer's report.
Oh, treasurer's report, Elaine? No, there's no money. Okay, that's pretty simple. There's no surplus.
No, we do have a treasurer's
One last thing. The Virginia Beach Civic Leagues are all invited to the VBCCO meeting. It's going to be at the oceanfront at the emergency medical meeting. I've been posting about it. What it is we're trying to encourage people who are members of civic leagues to become more active in the VBCCO so that we have a voice for the citizens to speak in front of City Council collectively. And I know people from Aragona, people from Forest Glen, people from Thalia, people from Thorogood, a bunch of different groups are going to be there. And so it's going to be, we keep posting it, but it's next Thursday night, the 26th at 7 p.m.
Okay, just for the ignorant, VBCCO, can you just...
Virginia Beach City
Council of Civic Organization.
Council of, yes.
Civic organizations,
Yeah,
okay.
it's been in existence since the 1960s.
Okay.
Roger, we do have a treasurer's report.
Oh, we do have a treasurer's report, okay? Mark's
No,
Lane's going to do it.
You come up here if you would, please.
You have to speak
Can't
into
hear
the
you.
microphone, dear.
Reluctant treasurer's report.
The only information I have is our current balance is $2,973.
Lucky they don't have anything to say.
We're in the black.
Anybody has to
Yeah.
prove.
All right.
Blew the rest of the girls in boots.
Dee said she gave you the short-term rental thing to read. Did you have a?
I don't have any.
All right. A motion.
Anybody would like to join the Tidewater Libertarian Party? We prorate it. So their annual dues are due on July 4th. So you have February, March, April, May, and June. So it's only $5.
It's $1 a month.
$1 a month.
It's pretty
yeah.
expensive, but we're in the black. That's the good news. We're not borrowing against your account.
Yeah.
I make a motion to adjourn.
Motion
So
to
moved.
adjourn, second. We have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Wake up.
Thank you.
All right, thank you so much for attending.
John,
John, you got to sell members, man. We got to get more people.